The Athletic recently put out a survey regarding the Buffalo Bills entering 2023. I'm sharing my responses to those questions today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate you all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, something I've done every year, we will continue doing this year, and that is responding to the Athletic's Buffalo Bills fan survey. And if you're unfamiliar, the Athletic is an outstanding source for news and analysis on sports in general, but they've got great coverage of the Buffalo Bills through Joe Buscaglia and Tim Graham. It's a really outstanding publication. It's a good outlet. I enjoy reading everything that Joe and Tim write. And every year, Joe has put together this fan survey. And it's 25 questions that are pretty high-level questions regarding the Bills' outlook in 2023. And it's really fun for me to take the time to answer those questions for you on this podcast. Now, the survey's been completed already, and the results have actually been published as well. So if you want to see the results, then you'll need to have a subscription to The Athletic to check that out. But what I want to do today is work through all 25 questions and give you my answer, how I responded to the question for the survey. So let's do it. We're going to get into a lot of different talking points, cover a lot of ground, and this will give you a pretty good idea as to where I stand with this team entering 2023. So the first question, how many regular season games will the Bills win in 2023? And for the survey, there's like multiple choice, 4 or 5 options on most questions. Some of them are yes or no type things, but I'm not going to give you all the different options. I'm just going to give you the question and my answer and some analysis as to why. So again, number one, how many regular season games will the Bills win in 2023? I think they're going to win 11 or 12 games. I think that's a pretty reasonable estimate for me. I know the schedule's a little bit harder. I think this team is better than last year. They won 13 out of 16 games last year. I think this year they will be every bit as good of a team, but maybe not match the win total just because of the challenges that the schedule does present. So I think 11 or 12 wins is my expectation for the Bills in 2023. Certainly think they can win more than 12 games. But I'd be surprised if they won less than 11, if that makes sense. The next question is, what needs to happen for the Bills season to be considered a success? And the options here were pretty much just defining success as reaching a certain point in the season, whether it's winning the Super Bowl, winning a playoff game, getting to the AFC Championship game, something like that, right? That's the answers. That's the opportunity that you had to respond was one of those types of answers. For me, I do have expectations for the Bills that they need to meet for it to be a successful season. I think winning the AFC East again is an expectation that I have. Advancing in the playoffs, not just getting there and having a first-round exit. I expect them to win at least one playoff game. But at the end of the day, I don't know that I can sit there and say, well, they have to get to the AFC Championship game. They have to get to the Super Bowl, anything like that. I think the Bills just need to continue to prove that they are among the best teams in the NFL. And I think they're a team that has a chance to go all the way and win the whole thing. And I want them to play like a team that indicates that to us. And so I don't know that I could sit here and say, well, if the Bills get this far, it will be successful. No, I think what it really boils down to for me is show that you're the type of team that can win the Super Bowl and convince us that this window isn't closing anytime soon. Now, I feel that way, but of course I want to see it in the way that the team plays. So, yeah, to win the division, win a playoff game at least, but at the end of the day, show that you are among the best teams in the NFL that has a chance to win the Super Bowl. Number 3, do the Bills have what it takes to win the Super Bowl in 2023? This was a yes or no question. I think the answer is very clearly yes. I think the Bills have had the right stuff for the last 3 seasons, and it will be for a 4th season where I feel like they have the capacity to win the Super Bowl. I think that's a very easy yes for me. Number 4, rank these 3 teams from best to worst in 2023, 1 being the best, 3 being the worst. And so what Joe's asking you to do here is rank the Chiefs, Bengals, and Bills in order of how I think they will finish in 2023. Well, in order for me to do that, I look at a lot at the past, right? And of course, I'm mindful of what the teams did in the offseason and project them future. But the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year. They knocked off the Bengals, right? And their ability to win in the postseason is outstanding. I think they have to be one. I don't know that they have the best talent. I went through this recently on the podcast. I think offensively, they're in really good shape. Defensively, it's fair to have questions, but that team just finds a way. And they've got really special talent at key positions. And I think they're the best team of the 3. Number 2, I would put the Bengals. I think the Bengals proved last year by going into Buffalo, winning 27-10 in the playoffs, that, they're a step up right now from the Buffalo Bills. And, we've only seen Joe Burrow against the Bills, right? This iteration of the Bills, that iteration of the Bengals, we've only seen it one time. Didn't look good for Buffalo. I don't think it defines what this quote-unquote rivalry will look like moving forward. But right now, I don't know how you can look at it any other way but saying, yeah, I think the Bengals are ahead of the Bills. Again, I think there's certainly a path for the Bills to finish better than Cincinnati in 2023, but based on what I've seen right now, the Bengals are the better team. And so there I have the Bills at number 3. It's not like these gaps are huge. I've talked in depth about the Bills and their matchups head-to-head with the Chiefs. The Bills have won 2 of the last 3, probably should have won all 3 of the last 3. So I don't think these gaps are huge, but just based on what history has told us over the last couple of years, I think you have to have it Chiefs, Bengals, and Bills. Number 5 is, what is your confidence level in head coach Sean McDermott? It's a scale of 1 to 10. 10 means all the confidence in the world. 1 means very little confidence. I would give it an 8. I think highly of Sean McDermott. I think that. I've talked a lot about him recently on this podcast. I think he is the type of coach that is going to have this team ready to go on a yearly basis, that gives this team a chance to win big games and, win playoff games. One of only 2 coaches in the entire NFL that's won at least 1 playoff game in each of the last 3 seasons. I have a lot of confidence in Sean McDermott, but I don't want to sit here and give it a 9 or a 10 because Sean McDermott does need to prove that he can lead this team, to higher levels, to get this team to the Super Bowl, to get this team to win a Super Bowl, right? I think we need to see that. So I have a lot of confidence, but there's still more for Sean McDermott to prove. Number 6 is, what is your confidence level in GM Brandon Beane? Again, a scale of 1 to 10. I'd give it an 8 as well. I think Brandon Beane has done an amazing job of assembling championship caliber rosters over the last several seasons. The build has been terrific. But I think getting the team to the next level is the challenge ahead for Brandon Beane, right? He's had this team at an elite level, capable of winning a championship, but there's some issues on the roster that have been prohibitive in this team being able to fully advance. And some of that is unfortunate due to some untimely injuries, but at the end of the day, I think you can really enjoy everything Brandon Beane's done, but also say, hey, if these things could have been different, perhaps this team could have went further, right? So I give it an 8, and just like Sean McDermott, I think there's a little bit more to prove from Brandon Beane. Number 7, what is your confidence level in offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey? Again, a scale of 1 to 10. This one I'm going to give Ken a 6. Statistically, the offense was really good last year. Had some big challenges. I've been through this, and it's not just Josh Allen hurting his throwing elbow midway through the season and having to kind of challenge defenses in different ways just based on where Josh Allen was comfortable throwing the football. But some of those key things that this offense was relying on last year just didn't come to fruition, whether it was Zach Moss as RB2, Spencer Brown didn't play his best football at right tackle. You didn't have your slot situation figured out. You thought maybe Jamison Crowder could help you there. He got injured. Isaiah McKenzie continued to prove that he's not a full-time slot player. You had the Gabe Davis injury and him maybe not being everything you hoped he was coming out of the 2021 season. And so there were some challenging dynamics for Ken Dorsey, not to mention the disaster that was Roger Saffold at left guard. And so he had some tough circumstances to deal with. He still was able to coordinate a very, very productive offense that was statistically outstanding. And so he gets a lot of credit for that. But how he counterpunches coming out of last year, how he evolves the scheme with a lot of new pieces, and how he takes a step and becomes a more rhythmic play caller and has better game plans, right? There's more to learn. He has a lot more to prove. So I give it a 6. So I give him some level of credit, but I think he has a lot to prove. Number 8, what is the likelihood Ken Dorsey does not finish the 2023 season as the Bills offensive coordinator? 1 means he's safe. 10 means he's gone. I'll tell you what, I'd be very, very surprised if the Bills made an offensive coordinator change during the season. I just don't see that happening. Now, if it did happen, I think obviously Ken Dorsey would present even more questions, but also the motivation to do it would be the fact that Joe Brady exists on this coaching staff as a quarterback's coach, as a William & Mary guy, as a bright young offensive mind that went from one season as LSU's offensive coordinator to being an NFL offensive coordinator to getting head coaching interviews, right? Like there's a trajectory here for Joe Brady that's been pretty encouraging. And I could see the Bills saying, you know what, I don't think it's going to happen with Ken Dorsey. We've got Joe Brady. Let's go ahead and hand this over to him now. I don't think that's likely. I'm only giving this a score of a 2. But I would give it a 1, except for I have to ask myself, okay, if they move on from Ken Dorsey, what's in place in season to take over as the OC? Joe Brady feels like the leading candidate, but there's also Mike Shula. There's also Aaron Kromer. There's also Rob Boris, who have all been NFL offensive coordinators. So the presence of options, and some being intriguing options, takes it from a 1 to a 2 in my eyes. But I just don't see the Bills making an in-season firing of Ken Dorsey. I just don't. I would be very surprised by that. All right, we got a bunch more to get to, but first need to tell you about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to the first home run. All of this on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's continue with the athletic survey and my answers to the questions. Number 9, and there's 25 questions. Number 9, what would have to happen for head coach Sean McDermott to be on the hot seat entering the 2024 season? And the options provided are like lose the Super Bowl, lose the AFC Championship game, lose in the divisional round, lose in the wild card round, miss the playoffs without a Josh Allen injury, or he won't be. And I think my answer here is that he won't be, right? I don't think there's a meaningful data point that's going to happen in 2023 that's going to make you forget about what happened the previous 6 years. So he just signed a contract extension. I know that people will say, well, Cliff Kingsbury signed a contract extension and got fired. Well, I have a lot of questions. It's not the same. That's a ridiculous thing to bring up. I think it's fair to say that a contract extension doesn't guarantee, right? I think at a high level, that's a very basic understanding, but it certainly is a signal that the team's committed to the guy, right? So I don't think that Sean McDermott will be on the hot seat entering 2024 unless the team just completely unravels, like big time unravels, where you start to hear weird messaging from players, where they fall completely flat, don't win nearly the games you expect, don't have significant reasons why. I mean, a lot would have to go wrong that would be outside the likely realm of possibilities for Sean McDermott to really be on the hot seat entering 2024. Number 10, do you believe the Stefon Diggs situation at minicamp is now behind the Bills? I want to say yes to this, but I'm not sure. I think we will fully get clarity on that the next time Stefon Diggs meets with the media, which I assume would be very early in training camp. And how Stefon Diggs answers those questions will dictate whether or not this is over. And there's a part of me that thinks that, they've gotten together, they got on the same page, and Stefon Diggs will have an optimistic approach to whatever his frustrations were being taken care of. But if Stefon Diggs gets to camp and is, has a certain demeanor and charisma about him and answers questions in a particular way, then I think we won't put it to bed. So I want to say yes, but I will feel better or potentially worse after Stefon Diggs has that media session that I'm eagerly awaiting, and I'm sure most of you are as well. Number 11, not including Josh Allen, who is the Bills' most important player? I think it's Stefon Diggs. When I think about which player not named Josh Allen I would have the highest level of concern should they be injured, that player's quickly Stefon Diggs for me. I mean, the domino effect here is significant. Gabe Davis is suddenly your number one. I don't think he's a viable number two, right? So you've heard what I said about Gabe Davis. Imagine this being the guy you funnel the passing game through. That doesn't intrigue me at all. I think Stefon Diggs is the most important player on this roster, not named Josh Allen. I thought about Deion Dawkins. I thought about Matt Milano just because of the lack of options at linebacker, but I think it's Steph Diggs. Number 12, what regular season week do you expect Von Miller to return to the lineup? I've said week 6 for a long time against the Giants. I'm sticking with it despite, even some hype from Brandon Beane. Of course, Von Miller's going to hype everything up as a week 1 goal, all that type of stuff. But I think realistically, he starts the year on the PUP list. Week 5 is in London against Jacksonville. I think they save his return for the game after, coming back from London, playing the Giants in Buffalo, Sunday Night Football against a really crappy right tackle in Evan Neal, and we welcome Von Miller back that week. I think that's what's going to happen. Number 13, which free agent signing was the most important for the 2023 season? I think it's Leonard Floyd, and I know that's crazy to think that a June signing is the most significant free agent signing, but it's the one that I think has the most impact, and it's at a premium position. I mean, I think that Leonard Floyd is going to push for 8, 9, 10 sacks, provide the Bills with a skill set that they need to be versatile with their fronts in ways that they want to be, gives them another bursty, bendy, long-armed rusher to go with Von Miller, right? That type of skill set to give them more finishing ability, his coverage skills, his ability to set the edge. I think he's the most important guy that the Bills signed this offseason. Now, you could look at Poona Ford maybe, but that's at the end of the day, it's a nose tackle. You could look at Connor McGovern at left guard. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a nice signing. I think he'll be a serviceable starter, but I think the impact will be greater from Leonard Floyd at a more important position. So I think it's Leonard Floyd. Number 14, what percentage of offensive snaps will first-round pick Dalton Kincaid get in his active games in 2023? I went with 50 to 59%. I think you can maybe talk yourself into 60 to 69%. But I think that Dalton's going to be a big part of this offense. I think part of that's rooted in who I think Dalton is as a player and as a prospect and what he's capable of, but also you take that and you parlay that into the reports coming out of minicamp and how he ramped up every week, how people are talking about him. It just feels like there was a lot of momentum for him to come in and make an impact. And look, they picked him in the first round. They traded up to get him. I'm not going to sit here and make any promises in terms of he'll have, this much in terms of market share and these many catches, all that type of stuff. But I think he'll be on the field for over half of the offensive snaps in games that he's active for in 2023. And I think it could be closer to 60%. Number 15, excluding Kincaid, which 2023 draft pick will make the biggest impact this season? Folks, I don't think you're going to like my answer to this because I think most people want that to be O'Cyrus Torrence. I have my doubts about him starting in 2023. And if he's not starting, I don't think he gets an active jersey, right? I think he'll be an inactive player most weeks. I just feel like the Bills, between Ryan Bates, David Edwards, Ike Bucker, Connor McGovern, I think it's most likely that your 2 starting guards come from that list of players as opposed to O'Cyrus Torrence. I just feel like there's no momentum there. You haven't heard anything coming out of minicamp, and I know that it's tough for an offensive lineman in non-fully padded, non-full contact type practices to really move the needle, but it just didn't. This doesn't feel like there's any momentum there at all. Maybe that'll change during camp. But I think there's a chance that Torrence is an inactive player for most of the 2023 season should, there not be injuries. Now, I could absolutely be wrong, and he could be the starting right guard. I could see that happening. But I think it's more likely that it's Ryan Bates or David Edwards. So that didn't answer the question. I answered why I didn't think it was O'Cyrus Torrence. That brings me to Dorian Williams or Justin Shorter as guys that may have some small role on offense or defense, but project as special teams players. And Justin Shorter, I think, has a very clear path to being wide receiver 6 and playing on those fourth downs. So I think it's Dorian Williams or Justin Shorter after Dalton Kincaid in terms of impact, because I just don't know if there's a path for O'Cyrus Torrence this year. We'll see. He can force the issue and perform at a level that, obviously earns him a starting job. I just don't feel like there's much momentum for that right now. Number 16, excluding Greg Rousseau, which second or third year player will take a big step forward in 2023? And there's a lot of options here, folks. I mean, Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, Boogie Basham, Spencer Brown, Kyer Elam, James Cook. I think it's fair to say that all or most of them will take a big step forward, but who will take the biggest step forward? Kind of feel like it's going to be James Cook. Excited for his skill set, excited for his year one growth, like in-season growth was tremendous. I think he's got a chance to be the Bills' feature back, push for 175 touches this year, maybe 200. And with that's going to come some production, and it's easy for people to feel that type of impact. Could it be Kyer Elam? Yeah. Could it be Spencer Brown? Sure. Terrell Bernard, if he's a starting Mike linebacker and plays well? Absolutely. But I think the clear choice is James Cook, but a lot of contenders, which is exciting. That's an exciting lens to consider, that you have this many second and third year players that are primed to take a step and make an impact for the football team. All right, we got a bunch more to get to, questions 17 through 25 after a very quick break. All right, let's get to the last of this survey. I really love this package of questions that they have here at the back of the survey. Number 17, excluding the 2023 draft class, who is the Bills' best draft picks since 2019? I think it's very clearly Greg Rousseau. Bills picked him number 30 overall. It's challenging to get production out of late first round defensive ends. It just typically hasn't been a spot where there's been a ton of guys that make impacts, but the Bills really bet on Greg Rousseau in so many different ways. They bet on who he was as a person. They bet on his development, a very raw player coming out of Miami that's come to Buffalo and been an immediate starter and a really good player. I thought he showed great growth from year 1 to year 2, and I think he's got a lot more in terms of ability for upward momentum and having a greater impact moving forward. And the Bills have to make a choice on his 5th-year option after this season. I think he's going to play great, and I think he's very clearly the Bills' best draft pick since 2019, excluding 2023. Number 18, excluding the 2023 class, who is the Bills' most disappointing draft pick since 2019? And I think this one is definitely Cody Ford. The Bills traded up to get him. They picked him number 38 overall. I mean, that's getting close to the end of the first round there. And, just completely flopped. I mean, never developed. I know that he had some personal issues. The Bills played him at multiple spots, but at the end of the day, he just was never good enough. And you expect an offensive lineman that you pick that high to be a pillar of your unit, and he never became that. And now he's on his 3rd team. He went to Arizona last year, didn't play better there. Now he's on Cincinnati. We'll see. But I think that's clearly the most disappointing draft pick that the Bills have made since 2019. Number 19, which player will be the Bills' primary third receiver in 2023? Fascinating question. I think we understand that in terms of targets, Diggs and Davis will be 1 and 2. But you got a lot of players that are in line here. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield, Khalil Shakir. They've all got a case. I feel like it's going to be Dalton Kincaid. I feel like that's the hot name. And 75, 80 targets could be the 3rd most in this offense. The target distribution is so fascinating to me this year. I think Diggs is going to be around 150. Davis around 80, 90. And then, Josh Allen's going to throw the football 600 times. There's a lot more to go around, and how that gets gets distributed is fascinating to me, but I think it's going to be Dalton Kincaid. Number 20, which player will win the competition at starting right guard? I think it's going to be Ryan Bates or David Edwards, with Ryan Bates being the leader in the clubhouse. I know a lot of people want this to be Osiris Torrance. I've talked about this. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think Ryan Bates is your starting right guard this year. 21. If you had to guess right now, which of the other 4 projected starting offensive linemen will get benched in 2023? Now, one of the options is probably none, and that's what I picked. But I think the most likely player is probably Spencer Brown. I don't think it's going to be Deion Dawkins or Mitch Morse. Almost no chance. Left guard, Connor McGovern. I mean, the Bills paid him a pretty sizable deal to come over and be the left guard. I think he'll get his opportunity to, make a claim for that spot long term. And the one that's the most shaky is Spencer Brown. Now the Bills would have to feel comfortable about who they're putting in, whether it's David Quessenberry or Brandon Shell or Tommy Doyle, but my answer is probably none. If you made me pick a player, I'd say Spencer Brown. Number 22, which player will win the competition at starting middle linebacker? I think it's going to be Terrell Bernard. Young player, 3rd-round pick. You hear Sean McDermott talk about his relationship with Dave Aranda, who was Terrell Bernard's coach at Baylor. Has a year of experience, has some athleticism. You think about the way that the Bills have talked about wanting another matchup type player to go with Matt Milano. He's the guy that fits that description the best. And Dorian Williams being a rookie, I think that gives the edge to Terrell Bernard. I think the dark horse here is Tyrell Dotson, who just has the most experience in the system, and the Bills could use that as a deciding factor in their value of the communication component of what this linebacker does. But I think it's going to be Terrell Bernard. Number 23, which player will win the competition as the second starting boundary cornerback opposite of Tre'Davious White? I hope it's Kyer Elam, folks. Highest ceiling, biggest investment. He's 1st-round pick. I mean, you drafted this guy to be a long-term starter for your football team. Let's do that. But I could talk myself into Kyer Elam, Dane Jackson, or Christian Benford for different reasons. I hope it's Kyer Elam. Surely the team wants it to be Kyer Elam. But whatever variables are in place that makes this even a conversation will need to be settled for him to get the job. The Bills aren't going to hand it to him, right? That they've made that clear. They've made that clear. And my biggest fear is that they're all close, right? They're all pretty close. They all have a claim to be the starter, and the Bills wind up finding ways to play all 3. Just roll with Kyer Elam, man. That's what I would do. Number 24, Ed Oliver will blank the value of his extension signed through 2027. And so what Joe's getting at with this question is, what do you project from Ed Oliver that's going to how is that going to measure up to the contract extension that pays him the 14th most amount of money in the league per year among interior defensive linemen? My choice here was prove he's worth the money, but not more than that. I mean, he's the 14th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. I think he's definitely one of the best 14 defensive tackles in the NFL. I think that's a fair place to put him. I think he's at that level. So I think he's going to prove he's worth the money, but probably not more than that. I don't know he's going to outplay this deal. Maybe he can, but I think it's most likely that he'll prove he's worth the money. Number 25, the last question. If you had to make the call right now, do you think the Bills should re-sign wide receiver Gabe Davis to a long-term extension? No, I don't think they should. I think he's going to be on the low end, $11, $12 million a season, probably around 15. And with what you're paying Diggs, what you're paying Knox, the investment you have in Dalton Kincaid as a 1st-round pick, I don't know. I think that this is where I would get nervous about more money being dropped into that position in terms of offensive weapons, and a guy in Gabe Davis that just has limitations that I don't think warrants 100 targets. So I don't think they should, but I predict that they will. I think they're going to do it. I mean, I've referenced it a lot. The way that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane talk about Gabe Davis. The guy just won the offseason award for work ethic. I mean, you hear Sal Capaccio talk about him having Bills DNA in every way. I mean, I think he's going to be around, but I would not allocate the salary cap space to him. I'd want to find a more complete option, especially if I'm going to commit to that player long-term on a market value deal. So there you have it. All 25 of my answers for the Athletic fan survey. You can head over to the Athletic and see how all of these answers shaked out, right? Joe produced all of the questions and then the answers, but also shared like what percentage of people picked each given answer. So really fun project that they do every single year. And I enjoy the opportunity to share my answers with you. All right, folks, tomorrow's going to be really fun. Bruce Nolan on the podcast with me. And we're doing something that we've done now for 4 years in a row. And it's we go back to the 2023 NFL draft and we tell you who we would have picked if we were the Buffalo Bills. And so that is really fun. We'll see how much of what Brandon Beane did matches up with what Bruce and I would have done. So that's coming your way tomorrow. Don't miss it. Make sure you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.